It all starts in an elementary school during a presentation about what career the students wanted to have. A boy says he wants to be president, but his classmates start laughing at it. With that, the teacher jokes that the boy should increase his salary and then tells him to sit down. At this point, the master looks at his roll call to see who will be next to perform. Then he calls a shy girl named Baeksun to come to the front of the room. The young woman looks very nervous and embarrassed as she gets up from her desk. Arriving at the front, she introduces herself and says that her dream is to become a wonderful adult. She keeps saying that she will work hard like her parents and eat lots of delicious things. But the scene changes to the future, showing that she has become an unemployed gambling addict. Very angry for having lost the game, she cleans the mess she made on her table. The girl then complains that her team in the game is horrible and that bad players should be deported. In this we see the floor of your room, which is completely messed up with a garbage bag. After getting stressed out with the game, the girl throws herself on the bed and goes back to using her cell phone. She feels tired from playing all day, so she looks for something fun to do. A young woman finds a horror story about garbage in an apartment and is disgusted by the situation. Ironically, she laughs at the story without realizing that her own room is a pigsty and she is unemployed. The only thing the girl does all day is stay at home doing absolutely nothing. With a tired look on her face, the young woman gets up and heads towards her kitchen. Arriving there, the girl realizes that her sink is full of dirty dishes that she hasn't washed in days. But she doesn't seem worried at all because she already has a solution to this problem. His big idea is to simply eat instant noodles prepared in the package itself. This way the girl won't need a pan and she won't have to wash any dishes afterwards. Then the girl goes back to her computer and eats everything while the trash piles up on her desk. After finishing her meal, the young woman decides it is time for her dessert. To accompany the pasta, she drinks a coffee that was already cold enough to drink all at once. At this point your hand starts to shake a little, either from the caffeine or your sedentary lifestyle. Satisfied with her meal, the girl burps and thinks that this is real life. Meanwhile, outside the building, a delivery truck is parked in the alley. A delivery man climbs the stairs of the building carrying a box with great difficulty. He then leaves the package right in front of our protagonist's apartment door. The delivery man knocks on the door of apartment 303, but no one answers. With that, the man grumbles that no one is ever home and takes off his dirty gloves. He then leaves the package on the floor and walks away down the dark hallway of the building. Inside, 26-year-old Baeksun pretended she wasn't home as usual. The young woman hears the delivery man's footsteps moving away and assumes he has already gone downstairs. To be sure, she peeks through the peephole and confirms that the hallway is empty. The girl quickly opens the door and picks up the box that was left on the floor. When she opens the package, she finds several jars of food with ice packs to preserve it. The girl looks at her cell phone and sees a message from her mother saying that she sent side dishes. She starts unpacking things, wondering what's inside the jars. When she finds a pot of squid strips, the girl gets very excited because she loves this dish. Then she picks up a heavy pot and immediately imagines that it must be roast beef. But when he finds fried seaweed stalks, his expression completely changes to one of disgust. Feeling lazy, she decides to put everything in the fridge and organize the jars later. The young woman even drops one of the packages on the floor but doesn't seem to care about the dirt. The girl turns around with the box and we see how filthy and messy her kitchen is. With a tired expression, she opens the refrigerator door to put things away. But when she opens the cooler, the girl finds an even bigger mess inside. She is shocked to realize that she has no space to store the side dishes. Angry, the young woman begins to take out everything in the refrigerator to make room. Then the girl complains about the amount of things that have been stored there for a long time. Then she finds something broken and without even thinking twice throws it away. The girl starts throwing away everything that is old, like a coffee and a sachet of ketchup. She also throws away homemade cheese and black bean sauce that have expired. However, in the middle of cleaning, the girl is surprised to find something unexpected. With a smile on her face, the young woman realizes that she has found her lost portable charger. After taking almost everything out of the fridge, she falls to the floor completely exhausted. On the floor we can see a bag of onions that was in the fridge along with other things. Her sink counter is now cluttered with everything she took out of the fridge. But the girl realizes that to throw everything away she will need to use the sink, which is also full. Your sink is completely overflowing with a mountain of dirty dishes that haven't been washed in weeks. With no other option, she decides it's time to face the mess and starts cleaning up a bit. But when you throw the fridge trash into the sink, a disgusting sight and a horrible smell appear. The odor is so strong that the young woman feels like she will get sick if she stays there for another 5 minutes. After recovering a bit from the stench, she finds the last item to throw away. It was a little plastic bag that was forgotten on the counter along with the other things. Inside the bag was a mysterious pot and she wondered what it could be. Looking closer, the girl sees a disgusting purple slime inside the container. She has no idea what it is and wonders if it was ever edible. With a strange curiosity, the girl decides to smell the pot to try to identify what it was, but the stench is so rotten that she screams and almost gets sick right there from disgust. In a rage, she throws the pot into the sink and calls it a demon for being so smelly. Still recovering from the trauma, the girl wipes her mouth and tries not to think about the horrible smell anymore. At that moment, the young woman realizes that the rotten food was the side dishes her mother sent. She feels guilty for forgetting the food and only eating takeout and noodles out of laziness. Motivated by guilt, she decides to save money this month so she will stop ordering delivery. With this new motivation, the young woman begins to wash the dirty dishes that had accumulated in the sink. Time passes and night arrives while the light in your apartment remains on. Already in other clothes, the girl realizes that time has flown by and her stomach begins to growl with hunger. She opens the now clean fridge and thinks about what she can eat to make her neighbor jealous. Inside the refrigerator we see the jars with the side dishes that your mother sent. Without thinking twice, the girl grabs the squid strips she loves so much to eat. In addition, she also plans to drink the coffee that was in the fridge after the meal. But to her surprise, the cup of coffee she wanted is no longer there. Then she realizes that all that's left is the bag with the seaweed stalks she hates. At that moment her mother calls and asks if she liked the seaweed, but the young woman lies, saying it was good. It's already night and people are returning to their homes after a long day of work. The window of our protagonist's apartment has the curtains completely closed. In her room the girl is lying on the bed looking exhausted and very sick. Suddenly her foot spasms and she lets out a groan of pain without understanding what is happening. With a sick face, the girl wakes up feeling a huge urge to go to the bathroom. Then with great difficulty she gets up and drags herself to the bathroom door. After using the toilet, the young woman stretches and yawns with a feeling of relief. She picks up her cell phone and wonders if she slept badly because she is still very sleepy. Looking at the screen of the device, the girl sees that it is already 6:28 in the morning on a Saturday. In this she remembers that she played until she passed out and only went to sleep around 4 in the morning. Doing the math, the young woman realizes that she slept for almost 14 hours straight, which is too much. But suddenly the girl realizes something and looks at her cell phone with a panicked expression. Desperate, she runs around her messy room, almost tripping over things. Already in her gaming chair, the girl breathes a sigh of relief for having almost lost something important. She managed to redeem the reward from an in-game event, which was a pinwheel hat. The young girl is delighted to see the pinwheel spinning and finds the new item super cute. Satisfied with her achievement, she decides to keep the hat in her in-game luxury collection. Now that she has collected the reward, the girl decides it is time to do some missions. Then we see her character, who is a muscular man with bunny ears, defeating a monster. The girl remains in her gaming chair playing non-stop and completely focused on the screen. With her feet up, the young woman seems completely immersed in her virtual world. The young woman feels very calm with the feeling of building something in that world. Unlike bad multiplayer games, RPGs never tire you even with toxic chat. Then another player with a bizarre 97-year-old grandma name appears in the game. The other player then holds a monster and says that that farm spot already has an owner. But our protagonist doesn't seem the least bit intimidated by the other person's attitude. Then the elf with a serious face tells our girl's character to get out of her way. The elf then transforms into a super muscular and angry version to threaten the young girl. With an evil smile, our girl laughs and begins to tease the other player without fear. The other player threatens her, but the protagonist just sits on the monster and laughs in her face. Satisfied with winning the argument, the girl thinks that the game that day was very exciting. Without wasting time, the young woman continues typing frantically on her keyboard to continue. Suddenly the girl screams in surprise and excitement at something that appeared on the screen. It was a rare monster called Moneybag Dwarf that gives a lot of gold when defeated. The girl thinks that if she sells the monster's item she can buy 2 chickens, so she thinks it's her lucky day. Without wasting time, your character advances with everything towards the rare monster to try to kill it. But suddenly something goes wrong and the young woman looks at the screen with a look of total confusion. Then the grandma player and her friend start laughing and teasing the girl for losing the monster. The two continue with the provocations and say that his head is so hot that you can fry an egg on it. The other player and her friend can't stop laughing and continue making jokes in the game chat. They even say her character is a human kettle as they step on him mercilessly. But his character responds that he doesn't care because he needs to go out to take care of his 2 apartments. The other player doubts her story, but without caring she simply presses the button to exit the game. With that, the young woman closes the game and stares at her now empty computer screen. With a victorious smile, the girl realizes that they are still angry and calls them losers. The young woman thinks it's very childish for them to call friends just because they died once in the game. She then stretches and wonders if they aren't embarrassed to act like that in an adult game. Declaring total victory, the girl decides to go to bed early to finally get her schedule in order. With that, the young woman lies down and covers herself completely to have a good night's sleep. Turning off the game before receiving a response, she celebrates her great mental victory. Already in bed, the girl feels renewed and says that the stress of 10 years has simply disappeared. But the next day at night, the girl wakes up with an expression of utter shock on her face. When she turns on her computer, she sees a 7-day suspension notification for bad behavior. Shocked, the young woman falls to her knees on the floor in disbelief that she has been banned from her favorite game. This leaves the girl in a very bad mood and decides she needs to do something to feel better. To drown her sorrows, she orders chicken delivery but complains about the price of the delivery fee. Then, when she looks at her cell phone again, the young woman notices something else that leaves her completely surprised. She sees that there's only 20,000 won left in her bank account, which is very little money. Desperate, the girl wonders how she will survive as she still has a week to go before she receives her allowance. Angry, she thinks that if she wasn't banned, she could sell her game gold to get by. With no other option, the young woman considers the idea of asking her mother for a little more money. With that, she calls her mother and, embarrassed, says that she is broke again. But her mother gets furious and starts shouting that she gave her money not long ago. The mother continues her sermon and says she will give her a new name while the young girl suffers on the other side. After her mother's sermon, the girl lies in bed thinking about how she can save money. Lying down, she looks at her cell phone and thinks that she needs to survive for a week with little money. The young woman then considers cutting out snacks and deliveries since she can cook at home to save money. But she comes to the conclusion that coffee is something she absolutely cannot give up. Then the girl goes back to the computer and watches some videos to pass the time. Suddenly she has a great idea and remembers one of her monthly subscriptions. The girl remembers that the YouTube premium payment is coming and it costs 10,000 won. So she decides to cancel the subscription for now and start paying again when she gets her allowance. After canceling, the young woman has a surprised look on her face as if she had had a big revelation. She feels like a genius for having come up with this idea and starts to move her feet with happiness. Meanwhile, outside the apartment, some stray cats start to fight badly. The noise of the fight bothers the girl, who wonders if cats don't get tired of meowing. To ignore the sound, she puts on a music video with a very strange singer to watch. The girl starts laughing a lot at the video, finding the song and the singer very funny. But suddenly she stops laughing and looks to the side as if she heard something. She wonders what that sound is and sees a strange police ad in the video. Then the girl remembers that her YouTube premium subscription has ended and that's why the ads are back. The bizarre ad shows a level 1 thug jumping into a cardboard box. Then 2 level 10 police officers appear on the screen to chase the criminal without success. But the bandit turns into a level 30 boss with a very stylish appearance. Totally confused, the young woman wonders what kind of crazy advertisement is being shown. To distract herself, she starts washing the dishes while watching a video on her cell phone. With a smile on her face, the girl seems to be enjoying the content she is watching. But another ad interrupts your video and the countdown to skip appears on the screen. Then an advertisement for a game with beautiful women appears and irritates her even more. Seriously, she gets annoyed when another ad interrupts her video again. She angrily scrubs the dishes hard as the ads keep popping up. Exhausted from everything, the girl throws herself on the bed and kicks the air out of tiredness and frustration. She then sighs because she can't play because of the ban and looks for something else to do. The young woman then lies down on the floor and starts watching movie spoiler videos on her cell phone. But another boxer ad appears and leaves her irritated with the constant interruption. With an ironic smile, the girl decides to see what the bizarre advertisement will be this time. The ad shows a puzzle game with a hero trapped by a monster. At this point, the young woman is surprised and intrigued because she wasn't expecting a game like that. She quickly analyzes the situation and deduces the obvious solution to solve the puzzle. With a smug smile, the girl thinks the challenge is super easy and that she is very smart. But in the ad, the hero fails miserably and the advertisement says the puzzle is impossible. The girl is completely confused by the result and doesn't understand what happened. Despite being irritated by the advertising, curiosity gets the better of her and she considers downloading the game. But when she sees the real game, she realizes it's just another generic RPG and not a puzzle game. Lying in bed, the girl seems to have been defeated by the false advertising and becomes thoughtful. So she decides she can't take it anymore and signs up for YouTube Premium again to get rid of the ads. With a victorious smile, the young woman celebrates that she can now watch her videos in peace. She laughs again and decides she'll worry about the money when it runs out, not before. At the end, we see the girl eating noodles again in her messy room without caring about anything. While eating her noodles, the girl says goodbye to the content creator of the video she was watching. Soon after, YouTube recommends a mysterious video and she continues to eat her pasta. But the video starts to play a meow and the young woman looks at the screen with a disgusted face. The girl gets irritated when she sees that the recommendation was a video of a cute kitten playing. She wonders why this appeared and assumes it was because of animal videos she saw before. In this video, the cat drops something and the girl doesn't understand why people find it cute. Angrily, she breaks her chopsticks and complains that cats only make messes and waste food. The young woman says that if such an animal were in her house she would karate chop it. After her outburst of anger, the girl stands in the middle of her messy room and remains silent. Sitting back at her little table, she finds eating only noodles a bit boring. With a bored look on her face, the girl thinks that a coffee would be perfect to accompany the meal. So she picks up her phone to check her bank account and sees that her balance is very low. Even so, the young woman gets up and decides to leave the house to buy what she wants so much. Walking down the street, she thinks that coffee is her only joy in life and she can't save on it. The morning sunlight burns her eyes as she walks and sees a man lying in the street. With a confused face, the young woman looks to the side when she hears a strange noise coming from the alley. Then she sees that they are just some street cats fighting very aggressively on the sidewalk. The girl gets angry with the situation and complains that those animals are making a mess again. She continues her grumbling, saying that they only tear up trash and run away when they see people nearby. The animals' fight continues with one of the cats flying away while the other cowers there. With that, a dark aura of pure irritation takes over our protagonist when she sees the scene. Tired of the noise, she screams and kicks in their direction to scare away all the felines. Proud of herself, the girl strikes a pose and says that no one can touch her territory. But she notices that one of the cats hasn't run away and asks why it's still standing there. Surprised by the animal's attitude, the young woman looks at it, trying to understand what is happening. The kitten then looks at her with a pitiful face and meows very softly. Suddenly the animal starts rubbing against her leg and the young woman is completely shocked. The cat continues to nestle at the girl's feet, who doesn't know how to react to the situation. Completely embarrassed and blushing, the protagonist is paralyzed by the cat's unexpected action. Then she thinks if she should pet him just once and reaches out her hand very slowly. But before she can touch it, the cat grabs something from the trash and quickly runs away. The girl stands there with a look of frustration and calls the cat back, but he doesn't come back. So she gives up on the animal and continues on her way to the convenience store she wanted to go to. The young woman just wanted a coffee but spent it all on a rice cake special she saw. Then she looks at her cell phone and sees that she only has 201 and wonders if there is anyone more broke than her. With a look of despair, the girl holds the drink and looks at the device, thinking about what to do. Without many options, she decides she will have to ask her mother for more allowance money again. But suddenly the girl hears a familiar meow and looks to the side with a very confused face. The young woman then realizes that it is the same kitten from before that has returned and is sitting there on the sidewalk. With a somewhat strange smile, the protagonist seems to have an idea as she stares at the little feline. Suddenly the girl is startled by the proximity of the animal that came close to her again. The kitten starts to walk around her legs while meowing in a very sweet way to her. Then the young woman remembers that she saw in a video that felines like to receive pats on their bottoms. With that, the girl approaches the animal and pats its back lightly to test it. The cat seems to really enjoy the affection and starts rolling on the floor out of pure happiness and satisfaction. The girl is completely shocked by the animal's cute reaction and her eyes widen. Then she begins to imagine what her life would be like if she adopted the cat to care for and play with. Sitting on the sidewalk, the young woman admits that the little feline is actually quite cute up close. Then she remembers the food and offers the rice ball to the cat that lies next to her. With a strange smile, the girl says that she bought it for herself but that she will share the food with him. So the girl breaks the rice ball in half to give a piece to her new furry friend. But when the animal sees the food, its eyes widen and its fur stands on end in fright. Suddenly the feline freaks out and jumps towards her with its claws out, ready to attack. Desperate, the young woman screams and asks why the cat is suddenly freaking out for no reason. At that moment, the girl loses her balance and falls backwards, spilling the food and drink on the floor. Your precious coffee spills across the floor while the muffin wrapper also falls nearby. The animal then jumps on top of the wall looking like a demon with the sunlight behind him. Still on the ground, the protagonist is in shock as the small animal runs away. Very angry, the girl wonders if the cat is crazy and what she did to make him act like that. The young woman still doesn't understand anything and just stares at the path where the animal ran away. In this way, the 26-year-old unemployed woman lost everything she had, which was her coffee and snack. Without caring about the dirt, the young woman thinks she can still eat the cake if she removes the dirt. Meanwhile, the sun rises and the city workers begin another day of normal work. But inside her dark room, the girl remained awake in front of the computer as always. At this point, the girl yawns and realizes that the sun has risen, so she finally decides it's time to sleep. With that, she throws herself on the floor and covers herself with a blanket, finding everything very warm and good. With an exhausted look on her face, she thinks there's nothing better than playing until she almost passes out. The cell phone falls from her hand, showing that it is already 6:13 in the morning on a Monday. The young woman then completely blacks out and sleeps on the floor, even with the device charging next to her. But suddenly a very loud and annoying noise starts coming from somewhere in the building. The sound wakes the girl, who screams in fright and gets up quickly without understanding anything. Still sleepy, the girl tries to recover from the fright and wonders what that noise was. Looking out the window, the young woman sees that the street is quiet, so the sound came from her apartment. Very angrily, she complains that no one there has any sense of time and that they started running at 9. At this point, the protagonist realizes that she only slept for 2 hours and complains that it is very difficult to fall asleep. Very angry, the girl screams and yells for the noise to stop because she can't take it anymore. But a very loud, mocking laugh keeps coming from somewhere near his apartment. Irritated by the situation, the young woman wonders who the unemployed person is who is laughing like that. Without patience, the protagonist gets up and goes towards the door to confront the neighbors. Arriving in the hallway, she realizes that the laughter is coming from the apartment across the street. Angry, the girl runs and complains that they know the walls are thin, but they don't care. She approaches the open door and decides that today she will teach them a lesson in manners. But when she looked inside, the young woman saw 2 men with unfriendly faces drinking together. The girl stands at the door and the guys look at her, surprised by her sudden appearance there. At this point, the protagonist freezes in fear when she realizes that her neighbors are much scarier. She quickly changes her attitude and with a nervous smile asks if she can come in for a moment. The men curse her a lot and the girl gets scared and runs down the hallway in great fear. Without thinking twice, the young woman runs down the stairs to escape the building as quickly as possible. Once outside, she breathes a sigh of relief and says she almost died because those people look terrible. The girl then realizes that her building has thin walls and the residents are all very strange. The girl concludes that cheap places always have their reasons and decides to take a walk until the noise stops. Then the young woman starts walking down the street to try to clear her head a little and calm down. Suddenly she hears a scream and sees a couple arguing with another woman about feeding stray cats. The blonde complains that she can't sleep at night because of the noise the animals make. But the other lady says there's nothing wrong with giving food to the poor pets. Angry, the blonde shouts that if she cares so much, she should take the cats home to feed them. Then the woman with glasses sees our protagonist and calls her to participate in the discussion there. Without ceremony, the blonde pulls her aside and says that since she lives there, she should say something too. She then points to the young woman's dark circles and says they are definitely because of the cats. The other lady turns to the girl and asks if she thinks it's right to let the little angels starve to death. The one with glasses then asks if the noise doesn't bother her and the young woman agrees, a little awkwardly. Suddenly the girl realizes the situation and wonders why on earth she got herself into this. She thinks she's already irritated from not sleeping and now she's stuck in the middle of a neighbor's fight. Determined to resolve the situation, the girl prepares to speak and show that she will have no mercy. But the man in the argument loses his patience and simply grabs the head of the woman with glasses. The man threatens the blonde, saying he will break her head, and our girl is terrified in the middle. With a powerful punch, the man opens a crater in the ground to show that he is not joking. The cat lady also joins the fight and punches the blonde in the head without any mercy. At that moment, those drunk neighbors appear at the door of the building and the blonde is on the floor. The weird neighbor complains that the noise is too loud and politely asks them to stop. At this, the cat lady becomes sullen and turns to face the new intruders. With all this confusion, our girl takes the chance to get away from there as quickly as possible. Far away, the girl tries to catch her breath after running so hard to escape the confusion. The young woman complains that her neighborhood is insane and wonders if it is really a modern country. She decided to move out of that horrible place as soon as she wins the lottery one day. Crouching on the street, she says she just wanted to live in a good neighborhood where there were no strange people. Your dream is to have a big house with a great view so you can start your day gracefully. But reality is harsh and the girl just clasps her hands together with an expression of utter despair. Desperate, the 26-year-old girl prays to God for free money every month. Finally, the hallway is silent, so she quietly returns to her apartment. The scene changes to a lady on a bus who realizes she needs to get off at the next stop. With that, She quickly gets out of the vehicle and stands at the bus stop on the street. Then the lady takes out her cell phone to check the map and find the address she is looking for. When she finds the location on the device's map, she celebrates having managed to locate herself. With a smile of relief, she thinks that technology makes things much easier these days. Meanwhile, in the protagonist's room, her cell phone starts to vibrate on the table. The young woman is slumped in her gaming chair with a bored look on her face and nothing to do. In this, she just stares at the screen while a video of a cute kitten plays. The girl complains that she has broken bands, so all she has left is to watch videos. When she looks at the date, she realizes it's allowance day and wonders where her mother is. With a sigh of frustration, the young woman continues to wait for some news or money. Suddenly the girl hears her noisy neighbors fighting again in the middle of the day. With an excited face, she gets up from her chair as if she had a great idea. The girl then says that she was bored and that the situation is perfect for her at the moment. Then the young woman goes to the door and strikes a pose saying that today's weather is seductive. The lady arrives at apartment 303 and looks for the password to be able to enter. After a moment, she finally manages to open the door and enters the apartment. Exhausted, the woman says she just wanted to stop by and see how the girl was doing there. But when she enters, she is shocked by the mess and the strange noises made by the young woman. The girl continues to squirm and asks them to stop it once and for all. With a serious face, the older woman just watches the bizarre scene that is happening. Then the lady calls the young woman, who continues with her strange behavior without noticing anything. Suddenly the protagonist notices her mother there and asks in shock when she arrived. Angry, the mother pulls her and tells her to stop shouting and get down from there immediately. The older woman then complains about the state of the room and asks if humans live there. On the floor we see dirty clothes and trash everywhere, and the mother calls her the trash princess. The girl defends herself by saying that she cleans, but her mother arrived on the very day it was dirty. After a good cleaning, the young woman is lying on the floor completely exhausted from cleaning so much. With the room clean, the mother asks if it doesn't look like a place where someone lives now. The lady then tells her daughter to get up, but she just mumbles, unable to move. Code download content _copy expand _less. The mother then asks if she is following through with her plans after leaving her job and reminds her daughter that she talked about writing. The nervous young woman lies, saying that she is working on it and that if she continues she will have good results. But the older woman crosses her arms with a look on her face that shows she doesn't believe the story at all. The lady then hands over a white envelope and the girl asks confused what it is. Upon learning that it is her allowance, the young woman smiles broadly and says that her jaw will drop with happiness. The mother says she just wanted to see how she was doing and leave the money, but ended up spending all her time cleaning. The young woman says goodbye to her mother, but the lady tells her to work hard before marrying her off to someone else. With a smile, the girl enters the house, but on the way her old slipper finally breaks in half. Back in her chair, the girl smells the money and says she missed that good smell. At that moment, the young woman turns into a demon with horns made of banknotes. She is so happy, but suddenly someone knocks on her door and a voice outside asks her to open it. The girl gets scared and the voice identifies itself as the neighbor who heard all the commotion before. Meanwhile, her mother on the bus thinks it will take 3 hours to get there and decides to take a nap. So from outside a voice shouts, telling us to open the door and saying that he knows what is happening inside. At this point, our heroine is shocked and wonders why her neighbor is acting like that out of nowhere. She then remembers that she was making some strange noises against the wall, and that maybe that's why. Completely embarrassed, she thinks she never imagined what she would do if someone knocked on the door. Outside, the neighbor says she heard the door close a minute ago, so there's no way she can pretend she's not home now. And suddenly the protagonist has a brilliant idea because she remembered something she saw on the internet once. She then searches on her phone how to resolve a dispute with neighbors over noise complaints. The solution she finds is very simple, and she just needs to pretend to be completely crazy. So she decides to open the door, but to her surprise the neighbor recognizes her as the girl with dark circles under her eyes. Our hero stands completely still without understanding anything because her plan already went wrong at the beginning. The girl then invites him to talk and complains about her feeding someone in front of her house. The protagonist is shocked because she didn't expect the conversation to take such a completely unexpected turn. But before she could answer, the blonde simply slams the door in her face with force. With that, she stands there outside wondering if that crazy protagonist really slammed the door in his face. And she realizes that this method only works with strangers and not with acquaintances. And so, the neighbor then complains about the building's poor insulation and asks him to be more adequate. The protagonist gets all embarrassed and tries to say that it wasn't exactly the way she thought it was. but the blonde interrupts her and says she heard several chaotic noises coming from there today, and so she immediately denies it and explains that she doesn't even have a boyfriend to make that kind of noise. At this point, she thinks that having a noisy boyfriend or watching movies alone at full volume are terrible options. The girl goes into despair, not knowing which excuse would be the least shameful to give. The neighbor then just sighs as she is running out of patience with that nonsense. Anyway, she says she has to go and warns that she won't forgive if it gets loud again. And with the message given, the girl simply turns her back and leaves for her apartment. Our hero remains standing at the door without any reaction after taking that scolding, and until she remembers that she was the one who started the noise and gets angry at being scolded. And full of hate, she promises that next time she will teach that little girl a lesson. On the other side, her door closes and a silence takes over the hallway. The protagonist then goes home grumbling about his bad luck and what a bad day it has been. Back in her room, we see her picking up some banknotes that were on the floor. With that, she looks out her bedroom window thinking about how completely crazy the day was. And she then decides that she is too stressed today, and that the best thing to do is go to sleep. And so she plans to go to the bank the next morning in hopes she won't run into her neighbor on the way. And so then the night passes peacefully and a new day begins in the neighborhood with the sky brightening. In the morning, we see our heroine walking down the street enjoying the peace before her tasks. But she looks at her full wallet and gets excited because despite the problems it was worth it. Suddenly she notices something strange and turns to see her neighbor sitting. And so our hero is shocked to find the girl there and wonders what the hell happened. Looking closer, she realizes that the blonde was crying a lot and her face was all blurred. Then she approaches her and asks if she is the neighbor to confirm her identity. At this point, the girl breaks down crying and screams in despair, asking why everyone is abandoning her. She is startled by her reaction and complains about the strong smell of alcohol coming from the blonde. She approaches the door and cries, saying that it is already the 4th time this year, and complains about her ex-boyfriend. Awkwardly, our heroine just says that she doesn't understand much about love and is left speechless. And so, the neighbor then thinks that the noise from before was just a coincidence, and that she really knows how to have fun. The blonde asks her age and says she is 22, so the prostitute replies that she is 26. Then she introduces herself as Chaeyogen and the protagonist says her name is Baeksun. Our hero, all embarrassed, tries to get out of the conversation and says he needs to go somewhere now, but the girl goes into a complete panic and has a look of despair on her face. And so then she grabs him with all her strength and begs him not to abandon her like that. However, the blonde seems to be nauseous and vomits on the protagonist's blouse. Even on the floor, the girl continues holding her and asking not to be abandoned. By accident, the blonde ends up undressing the protagonist without wanting to, and an old man, as he passes by, ends up seeing it by chance. The protagonist screams in shock and calls the blonde crazy because of the situation. Without thinking twice, our heroine runs away, leaving the girl behind, who apologizes. Running desperately and with dirty clothes, she is in panic. At home, the protagonist's sweatshirt is hanging on the clothesline drying after being washed. To calm down from stress, she decides to eat some hot udon while relaxing in her chair. After eating everything, she lets out a satisfied burp because the food was really good. The boy feels renewed and thinks that the inventor of udon deserves to win a Nobel Peace Prize. And so, she then checks her bank balance and feels confident that she can accomplish something today thanks to her mother's money. With this incredible feeling, she sits in front of the computer and feels ready to finally write. Baeksun then opens the blank document and prepares to write his greatest masterpiece. But suddenly inspiration disappears and she just stares at the screen without knowing what to do. And she throws herself on the floor complaining that she ate too much and can't concentrate, so she blames the inventor of udon. It's been 2 years since she quit her job to write, but she hasn't produced anything yet. Desperate, she thinks she can't go on like this but refuses to go back to work for a company. And so the story then flashes back 4 years to when she was 22 and telling her mother about an interview. In the scene, we see his father with a serious and somewhat intimidating expression preparing for something, and so, she then arrives in front of the interview building and says goodbye to her father before going up to the room. From inside the car, her father instructs him to answer all the questions correctly without hesitation. He goes on to say that society is a battlefield and that it must have the will of a soldier. Once inside the building, our hero nervously waits for her job interview to begin. With her cell phone in her hand, she feels very nervous and anxiety begins to take over her entire body. And she then wonders why the interviewer hasn't arrived yet since it's already past the scheduled time. And so looking around, she notices that there is no one there and wonders if the company is always so empty. And suddenly the sound of a door opening catches her attention and she turns to see who has arrived. And then the interviewer appears, apologizing for being late and saying he was doing field work. Our protagonist is left with a blank expression, not knowing how to react to the appearance of the man in front of her. The man then introduces himself as the company representative and says his name is No Yejin. With that, the two sit down to begin the interview and the man analyzes the candidate's papers. And so, she thinks the guy is very different from what she expected and seems more like the neighborhood uncle than a boss. Looking closer, she notices a sauce stain on the man and gets a little confused, and so she stares at the stain without hiding it, and the atmosphere gets a little awkward between the two. The representative calls him by name, and the protagonist is startled out of his thoughts at that moment. And so she then begins the interview by saying that there is nothing special about our heroine's resume. Yejin explains that her credentials are minimal and that she lacks experience because she is very young. And so, the man goes on to say that with those credentials it would be difficult for her to get hired at other companies. And so, according to other companies, they don't hire at your level because they leave after training. She gets desperate because it seems like she won't be hired and her boss confirms that she's a risk. And so, she thinks that if she is eliminated her parents would be very worried about her future. And so, in this she remembers when she would play while her mother wondered what she would do with her life. With this in mind, she needs to show that she is someone who keeps her promises and will not give up easily. Then she assures us she won't run away because she runs very slowly and gives a completely awkward laugh. She gets all embarrassed because she realizes that her joke wasn't funny at all and now it's all over. But the interviewer ignores the situation and asks what the ideal annual salary would be for our heroine. However, 2 weeks have passed and she has not received any response from the company yet. And so suddenly her father enters the room and tells her not to make such a fuss about this whole situation. The man says that life is full of setbacks and that he went to 20 places a day to find a job. He continues his motivational speech while his daughter just stares blankly. As her father leaves the room, she calls out to him. She shows her phone to her father and asks him to look at the screen really quickly, and with a smile on her face, the girl shouts that she got the job and that they called her to work. At work, the boss tells her she can ask whatever she wants, but she is too nervous. And because of this, she ended up renting an apartment near the company to make her life easier. Already in her new home, the protagonist stretches because she has finally finished tidying everything up. Looking out the window, the girl finds it strange that that place is her home now. And so but she likes the neighborhood because it has an old-fashioned feel and a really nice vibe. Since tomorrow is her first day of work, she sets several alarms so as not to be late. With everything ready, the young woman decides to watch some videos on YouTube before going to bed early. So the night passes peacefully and a new day begins for our heroine. But she wakes up in a panic because the alarm didn't go off and she's going to be late for work. Desperate, the girl runs into the street and tries to call a taxi because she can't be late. Luckily, she arrives at the front of the company and celebrates not being late on the first day. Even so, the girl runs through the corridors to get to her room as quickly as possible. Arriving at the door, she takes a deep breath because her first day will officially begin now. But when she tries to open the doorknob it won't turn and she doesn't understand why. And suddenly the door opens and a man appears in front of you out of nowhere. The girl awkwardly introduces herself and says she is the new employee who starts today. The boy then introduces himself as Kang Jukong and welcomes his new classmate. Our heroine is completely paralyzed and doesn't know how to react to that situation. The young man calls her in and says he will introduce the company to her. But first he sits at his desk and tells you that he needs to take care of one little thing first. At this point, the protagonist notices something strange about the boy and is completely shocked. Looking closer she sees a patch in his hair as he complains about the slow internet. After finishing he turns around and asks her name and she answers Jai Baeksun. And so he comments that her name is unique and takes her to his desk explaining about the company. But when she looks at her new desk the girl is shocked because it is all a mess. Jukyung explains that they forgot to clean up and offers to help clean up the mess. He tells her that the boss is not there and that the team leader will arrive soon so she can relax. And so Jukyung starts teaching the course and the prota thinks the work doesn't seem so bad. So he explains that most of the work is that and the girl is confident that she will do well. While he explains about the reports, a person comes and calls their attention. The boy announces that the team leader has arrived, and the two turn to greet the man. And so the leader asks his colleague if something good happened or if he is laughing at him. He then asks who the girl is and the guy explains that she is the new employee. With that Jukyung whispers to the prota to greet team leader Go Bacon. The girl quickly bows and greets the team leader with a little nervousness. And she then introduces herself as Jai Baeksun and says she hopes to learn a lot from him. Upon hearing her name, the leader is completely shocked and has a strange expression. And so at this moment the man seems to have a glimpse of himself growing old and having a family with the protagonist. He starts reciting a strange poem about birds and grass, leaving the girl confused and completely embarrassed. The man tells everyone to get back to work and ends the matter. The two stand there without understanding anything. After the strange scene, the boy calls the protagonist to go to her table to talk. Once outside, the protagonist asks her colleague if he wanted to say something to her. The guy says it's not something to talk about on the first day but that she should quit. Meanwhile, the boss eats peacefully and ignores an important work report. Not understanding anything, the girl is shocked and asks what he means by that. He puts away the cigarette and apologizes because it has become a habit for the boy. Jukyung then explains that that company is not a good place to work. The guy shows his hair and says it got that way because of that stressful job. The protagonist then asks why he is still there if the place is so bad. The colleague explains that he is trapped because of a 2-year program and cannot leave early. He also warns that no newcomer lasted more than 3 months in that place. The girl finds it strange that someone said all that on her first day at work. Suddenly she has an idea and seems to have understood what is really happening. She imagines that this is a test to see the loyalty of the company's new employees. She thinks this is a strategy to eliminate those who can't handle it. With a confident smile, the girl clenches her fist and feels 100 steps ahead of everyone, and so the girl tells him not to worry because she can handle anything and was born for it. The colleague then apologizes for what he said before and extends his hand to get along, but instead of shaking his hand, the girl is a little hesitant because of the hair that fell into the boy's hand. 3 months have passed since she started working at that company with confidence. At her desk, the protagonist complains about the strange tasks she receives, such as comparing prices. She started out as a graphic designer, but now she has to review official documents. Afraid of making a mistake, the girl thinks about asking for help, but her colleague seems very busy. And from his desk the team leader watches the girl as she mumbles in frustration. Suddenly he appears at her side and the girl gets a huge fright as he approaches. The man asks why she was scared and asks if he looks like a monster. Aron apologizes and says she just scares easily and he seems to accept it. The manager awkwardly says he was just trying to help the new employee with her work. He then asks what the problem is and walks over to look at her computer. She explains that the terms of the document are very difficult and he becomes interested in the subject. On the screen we see a completely complex document full of confusing information. Looking at the document, the leader is completely lost, not knowing what to do, and so he says she should be able to do this on her own, as it is part of the learning process. The protagonist complains that he is useless and only sends strange messages after work. She also complains about her boss who never reviews anything and always makes her redo everything. Completely frustrated with the situation, the girl feels a huge urge to quit her job. Jukyung then approaches and asks if she can help him organize some files, and so the girl accepts and comments that the documents are difficult but she is getting the hang of it. The colleague smiles and thanks you for the great work because now he has less to worry about, and she is very happy with the compliment and says she can handle it calmly. The boy jokes that his hair is growing and asks if she wants to see it, but the leader hears everything. With a dark expression the man stares at the two with a look of pure jealousy. Suddenly the boss arrives at the company wearing flip-flops and very casual clothes. He greets everyone and apologizes for always being away on business trips. To make up for it, the man invites everyone to a company dinner that night. The leader gets all excited and decides he's going to confess to the protagonist at dinner. At night, the team arrives at the restaurant chosen for the company dinner. Everyone sits at the table and makes a toast to celebrate the moment together. The boss thanks everyone and says that the protagonist is now part of the family. The protagonist drinks a little while the team leader watches her from afar. The man wants to declare himself but can't find the right moment and needs to be quick, and so he thinks the girl is different from other women and this enchants him more and more. In this he remembers other women rejecting him for his appearance and for being boring. Unlike those who only care about appearance, he stands up and calls his colleague. Completely drunk, the girl offers her friend a drink but he refuses. Seeing the scene, the leader has an expression of hatred and jealousy towards the two. The colleague compliments the girl saying that she drinks well and must go out a lot with her friends, and so she then replies that she doesn't have many friends and that she only drinks sometimes with her father. With that, the team leader tells the girl to stop pretending to be innocent. He insists she must have dated a lot of guys and asks what her ideal type is. The man then points at Jukung and asks if he is her type, leaving her embarrassed, and so with a smug smile he says he got it right and that she likes handsome men like him. At this point, the colleague complains that the leader is going too far with the situation. The guy says he always does this with new employees and it makes the atmosphere awkward. The boss then threatens him in a veiled way by mentioning the young man's grandmother to intimidate him. Jukyung is completely shocked and very angry at his superior's threat. Going back to work, the weather is not so nice. Our heroine is at her desk, thinking and remembering what happened at dinner. Some time later she is walking with her friend who reveals that her contract is finally over. The girl asks what he plans to do now and the guy says he doesn't really know yet, but the boy says he needs to get another job as soon as he can to continue. The boy then asks if the girl will continue working at that company. The girl admits that the team leader can be a little annoying sometimes, but she likes having her money and even paid for dinner for her parents. In a memory, her mother jokes that the food tastes better when her daughter pays, and her father jokes about eating his daughter's money and the two start arguing, and despite the little fight, she feels very happy to be able to provide that moment. That's why she says she'll be fine even with the problems, and her friend seems to understand. With a smile, the girl says that everything will work out and that he shouldn't worry. 9 months pass and we see her working for 15 days straight without rest. Suddenly a colleague calls her and asks her to check a document for him. The man asks if she reviewed properly and asks her to pay more attention. He complains that it is not impossible and that his former colleague did everything alone. Before leaving, the man still tells the girl to organize everything and she apologizes. The girl regrets that she will have to work overtime again since her friend left. And so, looking at her cell phone, she gets scared because it's already past 3 in the morning and she's still working. Completely exhausted, the girl tries to call a taxi to go home to rest. Once inside the car, she asks the driver to take her to the community center. Meanwhile, the driver watches the news and complains about a corrupt politician. The man then looks at her waiting for an answer, but she doesn't respond. With so much accumulated fatigue, the protagonist ends up sleeping during the trip. The driver then shouts desperately for her to wake up as they have already arrived at their destination. The next morning, the young woman wakes up in her bed looking like a zombie from so much sleep. And so, she complains that she doesn't want to go to work and even wishes that a meteor would fall to Earth. Then her cell phone starts vibrating on the bed, catching her attention. Picking up the device, the girl is completely confused by what she sees on the screen, and she sees a message from the team leader saying he came to pick her up for work. And so our hero wonders how he knows her address and what she should say to him. With a plan in mind, the girl leaves home, thinking she is very clever for the idea she had. But she runs into the team leader, who was waiting for her outside the building. The man then asks if she hates him so much that she would blatantly lie to him. The nervous protagonist tries to deny the accusation and wonders why he is still there. The man asks her to be honest so he can forget his feelings for her. Completely confused by the statement, the girl doesn't know what to say or how to react. The girl is in total panic at the unexpected situation and covers her face in shame. Not knowing what to do, our hero tries to apologize but can't form a sentence. But the leader interrupts her and says that she doesn't need to say anything else and leaves. The man then gets into his car and leaves her alone on the street without further explanation. Already in the car, he becomes enraged and accuses her of being superficial, swearing that he will ruin her life. From that day on, the boss started to pick on her on purpose at work. When she asks for a business plan, he ignores her and tells her to wait because he is busy. The persecution started with work-related issues but got worse over time. One night while working alone, the girl is startled by a sudden noise. So it was the leader turning off the lights to save energy, but it was just to provoke her. Seeing the situation, a colleague calls her to talk and asks what the problem is. The boy explains that the boss is fragile and asks the girl to try to understand him a little more. Back at her apartment, the girl takes out her anger on a can of beer, and she crushes the can with all her strength and sends her boss to that place. After the outburst of anger, the protagonist goes to take a bath to relax a little. Even so, she remains exhausted and completely drained of that routine. Lying in bed, the girl wonders how long she will have to live like this, and she thinks her life will only change if she happens to win the lottery one day. Then the young woman sees a news story about a very popular online soap opera author. She then remembers that she was good at writing as a child and even won awards, and for a moment the girl thinks about the idea but soon discards it because of her age. Suddenly her cell phone falls on her face and she receives a new message. It's the team leader complaining about mistakes in her work late at night. Fed up with that situation, the girl decides to quit the next day. The representative asks why she wants to leave and if something difficult happened, and so she lies that her health has worsened, and the man asks her to stay for another month. As she leaves the room, the team leader looks at her with a suspicious and irritated look. Suddenly the team leader shouts her name and asks what that is. Furious, the man shouts that she cannot talk like that to her older boss. The girl, embarrassed, apologizes to the team leader for her attitude. So the girl then lies that her cat pressed the buttons and thinks she doesn't care. Seeing that there is no way out, the girl decides to try her luck with writing. With that, a package arrives and it is a book to learn how to write stories. Sitting on the floor, the protagonist gives an awkward laugh at the situation. Completely exhausted, the girl has a blank, lifeless expression. And so looking in the mirror, the protagonist is startled to see that she has gained a little weight. The young woman squeezes the fat but thinks it doesn't matter because no one will see. Since she has nothing else to do, the girl decides to start exercising, and she feels a little insecure so she thinks she should at least do this. And so with great determination the girl starts running down the street to get in shape. The girl runs in a somewhat clumsy way but continues with her goal. Even though she seems completely exhausted, the protagonist doesn't stop running for a second. Tired of running, the girl decides to just walk so as not to overdo it on the first day. And she walks, she smells a delicious smell and decides to go home quickly. But suddenly 3 women appear and start walking towards you. At this, our heroine is completely shocked and has an expression of concern. She notices that the group has a strange look and seems to be from some sect. With her life experience, she knows that the only way out is to ignore those women. That's why the girl tries to walk past them with a grumpy face to intimidate them. But the girls stop her and ask if she can answer a university survey. They insist with a tablet in their hand, and the protagonist tries to escape, saying she has an appointment. Even so, the women do not give up, and the girl repeats that she really needs to leave, and they ask for just 5 minutes, but someone comes running towards them quickly. Our hero then curses the group, who are shocked by her rude attitude, and suddenly one of the women in the group becomes completely terrified of something. She screams that she is the Chihuahua and tells everyone to run while the protagonist is confused, and so then an angry blonde appears and threatens the women, telling them to go back there. The blonde runs furiously and scares away the group of women, who run away in fear of her. Our heroine gasps as the girl recovers and complains about the group of women. She then recognizes the girl's blonde hair and realizes that she already knows her from somewhere. The girl stands up and greets her excitedly, calling her neighbor Ani. With that, the protagonist freaks out and points at the blonde, blaming her for something from the past. The young woman is confused and asks what she did, while the other mentions an alley, and the girl tries to remember what happened in the alley but seems to have no memory. At this moment, the protagonist has a memory of a previous encounter with the neighbor. In the memory, she is completely drunk and ends up feeling sick on top of the girl. Our heroine desperately apologizes while the other complains about her clothes, so the girl explains that it was because of the drink and begs her neighbor's forgiveness. Back in the present, the protagonist says that she cannot forgive her because it was very embarrassing. To apologize, the young woman offers to buy her neighbor a chicken if she is hungry. Upon hearing the word of grace, our heroine's expression changes completely at that moment. The girl gets up excitedly and asks if she has been forgiven, and the other tells her to get up. The blonde strikes up a conversation, asking what the girl in the hood is doing there. She replies that she's coming back from a part-time job, and so, surprising her neighbor, the girl in the hoodie says she planned to get some exercise. Her friend comments that she doesn't even look like she needs it. A little embarrassed, the dark-haired girl insists that she does have a few extra pounds, and excited by the idea, the neighbor challenges her to a race, promising fried chicken as a reward if she's quick. Without even giving her time to respond, the blonde runs off. Arriving at their destination, the neighbor excitedly celebrates her victory. The dark-haired girl can barely breathe, completely exhausted. And so, while the neighbor brags about getting there first, the other girl remains breathless, feeling like she's going to spill the broth all over the floor at any moment. Without caring about the other's condition, the blonde suggests that she go clean herself while she orders food. She then asks if they can eat at her neighbor's house, who is completely desperate at the idea. The reason for the panic is simple: her room is a complete mess, and she screams for the girl not to come in under any circumstances. And so, noticing the other's desperation, the neighbor suggests that they could go to her house, becoming quite excited about the possibility. And so once at the apartment door, the dark-haired girl realizes that there is no escape. Since they live next door to each other, the neighbor will probably be on her case all the time. And so, a voice from inside asks who's there. The girl replies that it's the neighbor, and is asked if it's the one on the left or the one on the right. The door opens and the neighbor says she was just joking, inviting the girl into the apartment. And so, once inside the apartment, the blonde comments that it took so long that she thought the neighbor wouldn't come anymore, but that she arrived just in time. And so the neighbor then points to the table, letting her know that the food has just arrived and is hot. However, the dark-haired girl is shocked to see how clean and organized her apartment is. And even though she was a little embarrassed, the dark-haired girl invited her neighbor to sit down and eat. The blonde accepted the invitation immediately. The blonde neighbor excitedly offers her fried chicken, telling her to eat as much as she wants. And taking her first bite, the dark-haired girl is completely shocked. She wonders how that chicken thigh can be so tasty. Still surprised by the flavor, she asks where her neighbor ordered the food. The blonde replies that it was at a restaurant famous for being delicious and cheap. The dark-haired girl finds this strange, as she remembers having ordered food from this restaurant before. In an old review, she even promised never to return, as the food was so bad. And confused by the difference in quality, the girl wonders if the restaurant has changed ownership. So when it was time to leave, the neighbor apologized for trying to break into her apartment earlier, leaving the dark-haired girl a little speechless. And so before leaving, the blonde asks to be called the next time her neighbor goes to exercise. She explains that she is bored and would love to come along. Caught off guard by the other's excitement, the dark-haired girl ends up agreeing to the invitation. At night, lying in her bed, the girl reflects on how busy her day was. Looking at her phone, she thinks that besides exercising, she also ate with someone else, something that hadn't happened in many years. At first, she thought her neighbor was a bit crazy, but now, thinking about it, maybe the blonde isn't such a bad person person after all. For some reason, after thinking about this, a deep sleep takes over her, and the girl ends up falling asleep. Elsewhere, we see a man carrying a sack on his back while a small cat sleeps peacefully near a truck, and shortly after, the feline is awake, enjoying the food that was left for him on a plate. The little feline's peace, however, is interrupted. Other, larger, stray cats approach, clearly interested in his food. Wasting no time, the other animals advance aggressively. A small fight begins for control of the meal. The next day, we see the gray kitten walking alone through the streets, looking a little downcast after the commotion. On top of a wall, the feline now watches intently a bird on a nearby branch, preparing for a hunt. The dark-haired girl then appears and is enchanted by the scene. She quickly takes out her cell phone to record the moment. And so while the animal stretches, the young woman asks him to stay still for a moment, as she really wants to take a picture of him. Obediently, the cat sits and poses for the camera. The girl praises the cat and prepares for the click, asking him to hold the pose. And after the photo, the two just stare at each other for a moment. The young woman looks at the animal with an affectionate expression. Unexpectedly, the cat jumps towards her. The girl catches it in the air, lifting it with a smile on her face. With the cat on her lap, she begins to pet him. The animal seems to really enjoy it, relaxing completely in her arms. Just then, the blonde neighbor appears unexpectedly. She calls out to the girl and asks if she's going out to exercise. So excited, the neighbor grabs her and starts dragging her, saying she's going to help her train. The other girl can barely stand. A memory then appears in the cat's mind. A woman held him with the same affection, calling him Mimi, and saying he was beautiful. And focusing on his ear, the scene reveals a small cut, perhaps a mark from the fight he had with the other cats. Back in reality, the feline watches intently as a blue truck passes by on the street, which seems to trigger some memory in him. Inside a car, a man comments on how wonderful Monday is, and his joy is interrupted when something strange in the rearview mirror catches his attention. Running down the road, he spots a small, cute kitten. Desperate, the driver screams and wonders where the little animal came from. Trying to avoid the road, the vehicle suddenly leaves the road. Meanwhile, the kitten just meows, sitting calmly in the middle of the road. Changing scene, a knife with a red liquid drips slowly. Holding the blade, a girl with a disturbing look begins to laugh. However, the macabre scene was just the young woman cutting some tomatoes for a recipe. To do this, she follows a cooking video on her cell phone that teaches how to make sauce. However, the girl wonders if she can use a different type of spoon than requested. The story then takes us to a rainy day. And so, bored with nothing to do at home, the young woman decides she's going to cook something. Looking at her cell phone, she checks the list of necessary ingredients. The recipe calls for 300 grams of meat, 2 tomatoes, half an onion, and half a carrot. However, the girl complains that the market doesn't sell such small portions. And 16. With no other option, she decides to buy the larger packages and save what's left. However, the young woman realizes that she doesn't have some of the other ingredients at home. 17. Going to the checkout, the girl is startled by the price of 40,000 won. She wonders how the price got so high if she didn't take many items. And 18. When asked by the attendant if she has loyalty points, the girl simply timidly denies it. Back in her kitchen, the young woman prepares to cook the dish that cost her a small fortune. And smelling the aroma of the meat, she gets excited and praises the good smell rising from the pan. Following this step by step, she throws the chopped vegetables into the pan to saute with the meat. Soon after, the cook adds water and tomato sauce to complete the base of the dish. And 23. Despite having followed the instructions, the girl finds it strange that there is so little liquid in the pan. 20. Finding the dish strange looking, she decides to add a little more water on her own. 25. Even so, the young woman doesn't understand where she went wrong, as the color of the food is completely different from the one in the video. 20. Fused, she wonders if the sauce caused the color change and if she should add more tomatoes. 20. To your dismay, the video on the screen announces that the delicious tomato sauce is ready. The girl panics, not believing that this is the result of her 40,000 won. 29. Deciding to try it, she picks up a spoon, thinking that you shouldn't judge a dish just by its appearance. The moment the food touches her tongue, the girl's expression changes to pure shock. After tasting the food, the young woman realizes, to her surprise, that it has no taste at all. There too. Frustrated with yet another failure, the girl gives up on the dish and goes to the fridge to look for something ready to eat. And 33. Picking up a packet of snacks, she complains that internet recipes are a scam. For the young woman, processed foods are the best in the world, as they never disappoint her. 34. However, when trying to fry something frozen, the clumsy cook gets a shock when the hot oil splashes everywhere. 35. At night, the girl uses her cell phone to pass the time in the solitude of her room. And 36. While browsing social media, she sees a post from an influencer who is in great shape. This makes her think that everyone seems to be doing well in life except her. And so, continuing to scroll through your feed without much enthusiasm, your attention is suddenly captured by an ad. And so, the video showed a cleaning mop that seemed to be the solution to all problems. And so the advertisement describes the product as revolutionary, capable of cleaning any corner with incredible strength and tested and approved quality. Intrigued by what she sees, the girl becomes curious about that cleaning tool that promises so much. For one, the advertisement showed the price of the magic product, 43,801. 42. The young woman reflects on how cleaning the floor with a cloth always hurts her knees, and how it is difficult to reach the tightest corners. 43. With that mop, she imagines that she could finally live in a spotless house. Decided, she buys the item and starts reading the instructions. The first step is to fit the cloth onto the base. 45. Next, the manual instructs you to fill the container with water and connect it to the mop handle. 46. With everything finally assembled, the girl gets ready and pulls the trigger to test the water spray. With a lot of energy, a girl starts cleaning her room, looking quite satisfied with the work she is doing. And cleaning under the table, the young woman declares war on all the dust, saying she will get rid of it all. After all the effort, she stops for a moment and admires her room, which is now sparkling clean. And a few days pass, and we see the outside of an apartment building. Inside one of the rooms, the girl accidentally spills soda on the table, making everything dirty. And frustrated with the mess, she suddenly remembers she has a magic mop to help with the cleaning. But the process of using this mop is much more complicated than it seems, starting with filling it with water, cleaning the floor, and then disposing of the liquid. Finally, you still need to wash the cloth and then spin it to dry, a very tiring job. And so, sitting on the floor and not wanting to make all that effort, she realizes that there is a package of wet wipes right next to her. And so quickly, the girl takes one of the tissues to clean the dirt in a much more practical way. After throwing out the trash, she thinks the inventor of wet wipes deserves a Nobel Prize for their practicality. With the problem solved, she looks at the mop that was left leaning against the bathroom the whole time. The girl then wonders why she bought something so useless that only takes up space, and now feels like throwing the object away. Suddenly, she remembers an ad she saw for a super adhesive hook, perfect for hanging any type of mop and keeping the house organized. And sitting in front of the computer, the girl looks stressed. Her name is Baeksun. She is 26 years old, unemployed, and going through difficulties. And so, on her computer screen, Baeksun sees a writing contest that takes place 2 or 3 times a year. This competition, the best in the universe, has a deadline in just one day, making it a great opportunity for her. With the deadline approaching, the girl panics as she stares at the blank page on her computer. She wonders how things got to this point. Blaming herself, the young woman knows she shouldn't have asked herself why. Whenever she gets stressed, she ends up sleeping or playing games to escape her problems. Explaining that she only writes well when she's inspired, she plops down on the couch and ends up wasting time watching short videos on her phone. Now she realizes it's time to face the consequences. Desperate, a part of her thinks about giving up and trying the next contest. But Baeksun quickly realizes that she can't give in to discouragement. And trying to organize her thoughts and calm down a bit, the young woman decides that the best thing to do is to go out and get some fresh air. Alone, Baeksun walks down a deserted street at night, reflecting on her situation. The girl remembers that, shortly after quitting her job, she was able to write normally now. The pressure of needing to win the contest prevents her from continue. At first, her posts received a lot of positive comments, but now the comments section is always empty, which makes her even more discouraged. And filled with regret, Baeksun thinks that maybe she should have gotten a regular job instead of following her dream. And suddenly, her phone vibrates with a notification. The girl then wonders who could be sending her a message at that time of night. Surprised, she sees on the screen that it is a new comment on one of her posts. With a mix of curiosity and hope, Baeksun opens the notification to read what the person wrote, and to her disappointment, the comment is nothing more than a bunch of random letters from a random user, which makes her furious. The young woman tries to control herself, reminding herself that one day she will be a famous author. Even so, the feeling of frustration and discomfort is very great. Determined not to get distracted, Baeksun knows she needs to finish her essay quickly. Submitting her work to the contest is her last hope. So walking down a street she knows by heart, the young woman doesn't even need to pay attention to where she's going. Suddenly, a song catches her attention and makes her stop, curious to know what that sound is. It's a band's music video, and the song's melody ends up sparking his inspiration to write. And so looking at a streetlight, the young woman begins to dream of success, imagining how wonderful it would be if her wishes came true. In her imagination, Baeksun becomes a successful author with her book, The Secret of the Kimchi Thief, complete with interviews and everything. On a bus, the girl overhears a couple talking excitedly about how amazing their book is, and how everyone is talking about it. With a cough to attract attention, the young writer says she doesn't think the work is that good, but is happy that everyone is enjoying it. Putting on her sunglasses, she stylishly reveals that she is the author of the famous novel they praise so much. The couple and the other passengers are shocked and excited, asking for autographs. Baeksun calmly asks everyone to keep order, Even the bus driver gets emotional, lamenting that he can't get out of the car to get an autograph too. Still in her dream, the author goes to a bookstore near her home to donate a copy of her new book to the store. Later, at a diner, she orders a hamburger with every possible topping, showing that money is no longer a problem. Her fantasy ends with her parents visiting her in a huge house, commenting on how difficult it must be to keep everything clean. And Baeksun's proud mother says her daughter is living like a queen and that they raised her very well. Concluding her reverie, the young woman imagines herself in a state of happiness so great that it would be capable of sending her to another plane. Returning to reality, Baeksun stands firm in her decision. Even if she fails, she needs to at least try to take action to change her situation. Feeling completely renewed and full of energy, the girl runs back to her apartment, ready to finish her masterpiece. A while later, with the work finally completed, the writer sighs with relief in her chair. Now she can relax for the rest of the evening. Still sitting in front of the computer, Baeksun remembers that it's time to do her daily exercises. The girl then gets up from her chair, appearing to prepare to begin her physical activity routine. But instead of exercising, she throws herself onto the bed with a precise movement, as if she were hitting a target. And so, pretending to be an athlete, the young woman says that, after running around the house, she is ready to face the challenge, a weight weighing 195 grams, which is actually her cell phone. She continues the joke, treating the cell phone lift as a historic feat and wondering if athlete Baeksun will win the gold medal. Excited, the girl ends up losing control and lets the cell phone slip from her hands, which falls directly towards her face. The device hits her head-on, causing the writer to fall onto the bed, writhing in pain from the unexpected impact. At that moment, someone outside asks if she's going to exercise. Baeksun realizes who it is and is sorry, as she has no desire to go out. Your first thought is to remain silent, hoping the person will think no one is home and simply leave. And after a few seconds, the young woman discreetly looks towards the door, trying to find out if her visitor has already left. Outside, a peculiar-looking girl finds the situation strange, as she is sure she heard a noise coming from inside the apartment. Outside, the blonde girl yells for Baeksun to open the door, because she knows she's home and won't give up so easily. In the end, the writer ends up being dragged out of the house against her will to exercise. After finishing the physical activity, Baeksun admits that despite having resisted the idea, she feels very good and refreshed. As they walk, the writer wonders what her friend does for a living to always be free. The girl keeps saying she has a part-time job, but she's always around. With a suspicious smile, Baeksun begins to think that her friend is lying and that, in fact, she also does nothing, just like the writer herself. Suddenly the blonde screams, startling Baeksun with her completely unexpected reaction. Looking at her cell phone, the girl says she needs to go to work and complains that a colleague is absent, forcing her to cover his shift. Curious, Baeksun asks where she works. Her friend is a little surprised by the writer's sudden interest. The blonde then reveals that she runs an internet cafe nearby, leaving the writer completely shocked and open-mouthed with the news. With her eyes shining with excitement, the writer stammers as she asks if her friend also likes to play video games. To Baeksun's disappointment, the girl responds with a simple no, breaking all expectations that had been created, and the friend then says goodbye and invites the writer to visit the internet cafe later, if she is free. Arriving at the place, Baeksun is greeted by her friend at the entrance of the T's and PC room. The facade of the place reminds her of the internet cafes she frequented at school. And so, once inside the establishment, the young woman greets her friend and notices that the place seems to be much better equipped than she imagined. Looking at the spacious and modern interior, Baeksun is impressed, unable to believe that such a cool place exists in her neighborhood. Despite the good structure, Baeksun notices that the place is quite empty, with many computers without anyone using them. At the counter, a grumpy-looking customer asks to buy 3 hours of usage. Baeksun's friend, however, instructs him to use the self-service machine to top up. The man complains, saying he doesn't know how to use the equipment. Irritated, the girl responds that he should learn then. Observing the situation, Baeksun counts the customers and realizes that the place is very quiet with few people. Suddenly, the blonde stops and grabs the writer's shoulder tightly, leaving her confused by the unexpected reaction. And so with a look of pure panic on her face, the internet cafe manager realizes she's in trouble. Without giving much explanation, the girl asks Baeksun to take care of the store for a moment and runs out of the place. Completely lost, Baeksun is left alone. Ironically, the unemployed 26-year-old has just found a job, and trying to calm down, the writer thinks it won't be a problem, since her friend should be back in about 10 minutes. However, a huge group of boys appears at the door, ready to play. Alone at the counter, the young man doesn't understand how he was abandoned there. He's never worked in an internet cafe before. Trying to calm down, the young man thinks that the employee just went to the bathroom for a moment. Plus, the place looks pretty empty, so he doesn't think he'll have much trouble. Suddenly, this tranquility is shattered when a group of noisy men enter the establishment asking for a few hours of play. One of the newcomers then asks for the employee, wanting to know if there is anyone to serve them. Hiding under the counter, the boy panics as customers complain, wondering if the owner doesn't want to make money. And frightened by the sudden arrival of so many people, the young man begins to suspect that it might be a prank with hidden cameras. Meanwhile, one of the men threatens to storm the counter if no one shows up to serve them. The boy fears he'll get scalded by the girl if the customers leave. One of the men, already out of patience, leans over the counter and finally finds the boy hiding there. And so, with his hood covering his face, the young man explains that the employee needed to go to the bathroom. The customer doesn't seem to quite understand what he said. Ignoring the situation, another man throws the money on the counter and asks for an hour of play for his group of 7 people. And so the protagonist tries to explain that he is not an employee and points to a self-service machine where they can top up their time. And so, irritated, the customer shouts that he doesn't know how to use the machine and demands that the young man recharge it for him immediately. He keeps pressuring the boy, saying that they are very busy and that he needs to hurry. Completely panicked, the boy stares at the men yelling at him to quickly attend to the customer's needs. And so with all eyes focused on him, the boy feels pressured and doesn't know what to do, and feeling sickened by the situation, he can barely react as the men continue to shout at him to hurry up. And frustrated, the young man tries to explain once again that he is not the employee there. At that moment, the real employee returns from the bathroom, feeling relieved and calling herself lazy. This situation makes him reflect on how he was locked up at home for so long. Now, even the looks of other people make him anxious. So whenever he needs to say something, he is afraid of displeasing others. Therefore, he ends up saying nothing in the end. The girl, on the other hand, is described as someone who is quite sociable. Besides being communicative, she also seems to be very good at her job. Watching her, the boy begins to think that maybe he should get a part-time job. That way, he wouldn't have to ask his mother for money anymore. Back in his room, he sits anxiously in front of the computer, wondering when the results will come out. He has a good feeling about it. He remembers incorporating all the trendy elements into his project, so he believes it has a great chance of being successful. Finally, the long-awaited notification arrives, showing a list of announcements and the results of a contest. However, his hope is dashed when he sees that he was not chosen. He regrets, thinking that companies always prioritize products that make the most money. Even though the result wasn't what he expected, he accepts the idea that people deserve to relax with games after so much effort. Shortly after, we see a defeat screen in his game. In the chat, one of his teammates harshly criticizes him, telling him to stay away from the keyboard. Meanwhile, the taunts continue in the match chat, with his teammate mocking him for almost giving up. Completely discouraged, the young man realizes that nothing seems to be fun for him anymore. Lying on his bed, the boy spends time on his cell phone, without the slightest desire to do anything. He distracts himself with random posts, but not even humor about financial losses can cheer him up. Today, his self-pity won't be so easily consoled. Determined, the boy realizes he can no longer escape with momentary distractions. All his failures of the last 2 years are coming to light. This wave of frustration makes him question whether he really enjoys writing, or if it was just a way to escape his monotonous routine. Memories of his mother approaching him flash through his mind. She questions him about his grades. Not knowing how to respond, the young man can only give a forced and uncomfortable smile. In a text exchange, he lies to his mother about the results. Even so, she comforts him and sends him 50,000 won so he can buy something tasty to eat. Looking at the message, the boy feels guilty and promises himself that his mother will no longer be deceived from now on. With new determination, he stands up and stares at the computer screen. Your desktop is completely filled with text files, the fruits of your labor and dedication. He then decides he needs a part-time job so he can continue writing and at the same time stop wasting his life and have his own money. The protagonist then approaches an older man who is sleeping and calls him father. Without a response, the young man uses a wet towel to wake him abruptly. Thus begins the day for Jae Cheolun, a 45-year-old man, with his face covered by a damp cloth. Leaving the room, Cheolun is called by a woman to sit at the table and eat. Seeing the simple meal on the table, Cheolun complains, finding his wife's attitude truly disrespectful. And so outraged, the man shouts that there is no soup on the table without it. He refuses to eat. Tired of his complaints, the woman reacts with a sharp kick to Cheolun's shin, who screams in pain. It is explained that Cheolun and Gaiyang have been together for 26 years, so they no longer need to say goodbye when one of them leaves for work. This is an intimacy that, according to the narrator, only a couple living together for 26 years can achieve. In a hurry, Cheolun drives quickly towards his destination, the shipyard, a place he has been linked to for 11 years. Arriving at the place, one of his colleagues greets him, surprised that he arrived early once again and wonders how he manages to maintain this routine. During the shift he works in silence, while one of the supervisors calls out a newcomer who is distracted near a panel that is being erected. The boy can't hear anything, so the supervisor yells at him to clean his ears so he can hear properly. During lunch, Chillon eats alongside his coworkers, just listening to their conversation. One of the men asks the other why he is waving as if shooing away a fly. Then he asks if the watch on his wrist is new. Proudly, the colleague shows off the watch and explains that it was a gift from his son on Father's and Mother's Day. And so hearing the conversation, Chillon's expression changes subtly. His colleague then turns to him and asks how his daughter is doing. And thoughtfully, Chillon replies that his daughter is probably having a hard time with her writing work at the moment. He reflects on how the girl didn't even call her parents on this special date. Shortly after, a superior announces the end of the workday and tells everyone to rest. And so at the end of the day, a colleague says goodbye to Chillon, wishing him to return home safely. The man returns the gesture, acknowledging that the day was tiring for both of them. The house debt is still there, but it's something he can manage. His life, overall, is stable and peaceful. And despite the stability, Chillon sometimes feels bored with the repetitive routine. To break the monotony, he often buys a drink after work. Taking a big sip, he feels the cold drink go down his throat. With a sigh of relief, he expresses his satisfaction. That drink is the only small pleasure in his monotonous life. When he arrives home, his wife greets him and asks if he has had dinner, to which he responds affirmatively. And so then Gayoung calls him to see something, leaving him curious about what she wants to show him. With a smile she shows off a black bag with gold lettering. Chillon, confused, asks what it is. Gayoung excitedly explains that she turned a letter T into an L using pliers. She asks if the imitation looks like the original. Unimpressed, the husband simply asks why she bothered to cut out the letter T. And so changing the subject, Chillon asks if there was any call from Baeksun. His wife replies that there was no call, and wants to know the reason for the question. And with a sigh, the man walks away, feeling disappointed that his daughter hadn't gotten in touch even on Mother's and Father's Day. He thinks about how times have changed, but suddenly, his wife is surprised to receive a message on her cell phone. The message is from his daughter, wishing him a happy Father's and Mother's Day and mentioning that he sent a gift. Completely shocked by the notification, Chillon quietly repeats the words about the gift to his parents. The gift is actually a hand-drawn coupon offering a free massage. Her mother responds humorously, but the narrator laments that her 26-year-old daughter sent only a worthless piece of paper. And trembling with rage, Chillon stands up and complains that his daughter should have at least made a phone call instead of sending a simple message. And so in a conversation with her father, the young woman announces that she will start looking for a part-time job next week. He, however, forbids her, telling her to focus only on her writing work. Back in her room, the girl calculates that the 40,000 won she has could last up to 10 days if she is content to eat only rice rolls. And so ready to go out in search of her affordable meal, the girl prepares to leave the apartment, entering the password on the electronic lock. As soon as she opens the door, she is surprised to see the hallway full of boxes, indicating that one of her neighbors is moving. After, a man passes by carrying a bag in size, complaining of tiredness. In contrast, another man with a sinister expression comments that, despite his fatigue, the situation is quite satisfactory. And so frightened by what she just heard, the young woman loses her balance and falls to the floor of her apartment. On the other side, the man stops in front of the door of apartment 303, with the impression that he heard some noise coming from the hallway, and he decides that now he just needs to move the kitchen appliances carefully to finally finish the move. With a sigh of relief, the man bends down and picks up the last box left to be transported. However, as he walks down the hallway, he ends up tripping and losing his balance. The box falls to the floor, revealing its contents. Instead of kitchen items, there are metal bowls and various tools scattered about. Immediately, two other men come out of the apartment, furious at the noise, and ask if their partner wants to meet a tragic end. Crouching on the ground, the man apologizes for the noise, asking if he disturbed the neighbors. With a sinister smile, he displays a knife and assures them that he will make everything very quiet for them immediately. Outraged by this audacity, one of the men shouts for Mungchi to bring a club, believing he is being challenged by his neighbor, and sensing the tension that had built up, the man wondered if he had really made so much noise to cause that reaction. Even so, he gets up and walks towards the apartment, while the neighbors desperately shout for him to stay away. Ignoring the screams, the man tries to break the ice with a joke, asking what a corn-eating contest is called in English. Confused and sweating, the neighbor doesn't understand anything. The joke's response is a pun on the words corn and contest. With a frightening expression, the man repeats the joke and begins to laugh maniacally, making the situation even more bizarre. And terrified, one of the men pulls the other inside, convinced that his neighbor is a madman who won't stop talking about killing them. And so, disheartened, the man explains that he was just trying to ease the tension with a joke. He then asks if the pun wasn't funny, visibly confused by the negative reaction. In that moment of distraction, the knife he had been holding the entire time finally slips from his hand and falls to the ground, and frightened, the man apologizes desperately, swearing he didn't even realize he was holding the sharp object. Still irritated, the neighbor yells at Mungchi to ignore the noise and finish moving quickly. Feeling bad about the confusion, the man regrets having caused such an unpleasant scene on the very first day. Remorseful, the man decides he will need to apologize properly to his neighbors later. Inside her apartment, the girl quickly closes the door, determined to avoid meeting those strange men at all costs. Changing her mind, she decides to leave eating for later and go to sleep. After all, if she can sleep until the next day, she can save 8,000 won on her expenses. However, when she goes to bed, she feels hungry and realizes that she won't be able to sleep on an empty stomach. To distract herself, the girl picks up her cell phone and comes across a quiz game. The challenge asks whether the person would accept living with a giant cockroach in exchange for 100 trillion won. Outraged by the idea, she cannot believe that anyone would accept such an absurd proposal, but soon realizes the astronomical value of the offer. Wondering what she would do with so much money, the girl begins to fantasize about a luxurious future, even if it means sharing her life with a giant insect. And so as she loses herself in her thoughts, she doesn't even notice the presence of a real cockroach approaching on the floor of her room. As soon as she sees it, the young woman panics and quickly moves away, letting out a scream of terror when she sees the insect near her garbage bags. Terrified, she tells herself not to touch the cockroach under any circumstances, paralyzing herself with fear. And so, the girl wonders how an insect that size ended up in her room, and thinks it might be a beetle. She decides she needs to find something to capture it with, as she would rather have a tragic end than touch it directly. In search of a weapon, she finds a metal bowl in the kitchen, believing it to be the perfect object for the task. And so with the bowl in hand, she feels more confident, thinking that she won't need to touch the insect and that the capture area is large enough to avoid missing. The young woman then cautiously approaches the insect, mentally asking it to stay still. With a war cry, she prepares to attack, raising the bowl over her head in a desperate move to finish off the intruder. After the attack, the young woman looks at the ground and is surprised to find nothing. The insect simply disappeared. Unexpectedly, a friend appears and asks what she is doing there. The girl, surprised, wants to know if the newcomer came to pick her up, and still holding the bowl, the young woman searches for the insect in the room, without realizing that the creature has already climbed her leg. Pointing to her friend's bare feet, the newcomer asks if she had to sell her shoes to survive. And so with a furious expression, the blonde then asks if a boyfriend kicked her out of the house. Then she promises that she will find a way to deal with whoever is responsible for this. But with her face covered in shame, the girl quickly denies the accusation and begins to explain what really happened. The young woman confesses that her house was invaded by a cockroach, leaving her friend speechless. She insists that it is not a joke and that the insect is gigantic. The friend then asks if she would have stayed outside forever if it hadn't appeared. As they enter, the hostess asks her to be careful, as the insect is very large. And so confident, the blonde says there's no problem. She explains that, when she lived with her father, she encountered many insects of that type. Upon entering the apartment, the two come across the insect right in front of them, making the situation even more tense. As the cockroach walks near a bottle, the friend tells the other to pay close attention to what is going to happen. In an unexpected move, the blonde pushes her friend out of the apartment and runs down the hallway, showing that her courage wasn't that great. Confused by her friend's attitude, the young woman asks if she at least managed to get rid of the cockroach before running away. So trying to hide her fear, the blonde says everything is fine and suggests that there might be another cockroach in the house. She offers to capture it too. And suddenly, her friend lets out a scream of terror and asks if there really is another insect in the place, leaving the young woman even more terrified. And so the blonde friend wasn't talking about a cockroach. In fact, she was referring to the unbelievable mess in the apartment. Completely embarrassed, the young woman realizes that she forgot to tidy her room. Panicking about the situation, shocked by the mess, the friend can't believe that anyone can live in such a disorganized place, and she then points to a pile of hanging towels, asking how many her friend used without washing. Then the blonde finds a pile of pants on the floor and asks if her friend is shedding her skin like a snake. The friend continues to complain, pointing to the trash scattered around the house while the trash can is completely empty. Desperate, the young woman tries to stop her, explaining that it is just her unique style of organization, and she starts making excuses, saying she leaves her pants there for convenience since she goes to the convenience store a lot. To justify the towels, the girl claims that washing them one by one is not efficient, so she prefers to use 4 at once and wash them all together. And so regarding the trash, the young woman explains that it is inconvenient to dispose of it on the 3rd floor, so she accumulates everything to throw away at once. With a nervous smile, the girl asks if her explanations don't make sense, trying to convince her friend of her logic. The friend, however, doesn't seem at all convinced by the lame excuses she just heard. Lacking patience, the blonde asks why her friend doesn't just tidy everything up at once, instead of letting the mess build up and making the task even more tiring. And so horrified by the mess, the friend picks up one of the clothes thrown on the floor and wonders where she should put it amidst so much disorder. And so seeing that she won't be able to convince her friend, the young woman pushes her out of the room, promising that she will fix everything later. Completely exhausted, the girl yells at her friend not to mess with her space like that. She admits that she knows how disappointing her situation is. On the other side of the door, her friend warns her that kicking her out won't solve the problem. She then remembers that she lives right next door. And so, the blonde continues her sermon, explaining that the presence of one cockroach indicates that there are at least 100 others hiding. With summer approaching, the situation will only get worse if she doesn't clean the place up. And so later, we see the young woman lying on her mattress, completely dejected in the middle of the mess in her dark room. With a sigh of despair, the girl seems completely overwhelmed by the situation she finds herself in.